Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
Well, it's Commander's Horn, episode 123. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much. Jason Slummer revealed that 6 new leaders and a number of card adjustments would be kicking off the next season of Gwent, and this sets the stage for theory crafting on what the latter might look like on April 2nd when those changes arrive. Good afternoon, my friends. It's March 26th, 2020, and the original show note said March 26th, 2019, and Shinmiri caught it. And I am actually worried that I said 2019 in the last episode. But regardless of what time it is, it's a great day for another episode of the Commander's Horn podcast. Today, I am joined by Team Aretuz's Shinmiri and Ceely. Shinmiri, you will know from the Gwent Masters analyst team. Of course, he is a regular streamer of Gwent, as is Ceely as well. Ceely, I had a chance to meet at Challenger 5, as well as a number of other people. So it's good to see you again, both of you. How's social distancing time going for you? Shinmiri, how are you doing these days?
I'm doing fine. I am a gamer nerd, as you probably know. I don't go out very much anyways. I think the only difference is weekends. Sometimes I would go out and play board games with friends.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it hasn't affected me personally that much. I'm used to being inside, used to having online friends. So I think I'm one of the more fortunate ones, and I'm an introvert. So if you're an extrovert and you're a social butterfly, I think it's going to be a tough time for you.
Yeah. I feel the same way for being a streamer. Ceely, is it the same for you as well? Are you you're mostly just kind of? I mean, streamers. The same thing happened when I was talking on the last podcast. For streamers, it seems like it's just another week, right? Usually.
Right. Yeah, it is. Not much has changed for me either. I think it is the social aspect mostly, like Shinmari mentioned, seeing friends in real life and meeting up. Things such as those are a little bit more difficult to do, obviously. But yeah, other than that, it is. I have a little bit more time now to play some games and yeah, do stuff like that. So maybe it's not all that bad.
Well, I mean, we have to look for our silver linings. I think these days,
Right.
there are,
Yeah.
the moments where the idea that, you could say like the world does benefit from, like lots of factories, carbon emissions, like slowing down traffic around the world. I know that there's a lot of countries that benefit from just there being no traffic. Countries, I read a story about Delhi. They were trying to alternate traffic days, and it wasn't getting any better. But something like this, no one has a choice. So silver linings here and there. Maybe we're undoing some damage while we ourselves are getting damaged. So Shinmiri is returning to the show. I believe many times you've been on the show at this point, Shinmiri.
Yeah,
From our Pacific Coast friend here. But Ceely, this is your first time on the show. So where do you hail from, and how did you get into Gwent? Introduce yourself, I suppose.
All right. Well, yeah, my name's Ceely. I'm from Finland, and I got into Gwent after The Witcher 3, just as many other Gwent players, I think. I haven't played any card games before that, but I got really into it and started playing a little bit more when Homecoming came out. I know that's not maybe what most would say, but yeah, I really started playing a lot more then, and I thought I wanted to try streaming. It seemed like a lot of fun, and I watched other streamers do it. So yeah, I wanted to try it for myself, and now I stream Twitch, I guess 5 or 6 times a week almost.
Right on. Congratulations. Gwent's a hard game to start to stream. Honestly, I've felt that it can be tough. It's tough. I always call it streamer madness when I just kind of like see right through the obvious play. I had to get over that a little bit when I started streaming. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about actually one thing you said, Ceely. Sorry, I was trying to collect that thought. You said that you started after Homecoming, and maybe most people can't say that, but at this point, Homecoming's been out for almost a year and a half. And eventually we're going to say Homecoming has been like the standard for Gwent, the normal version, for a long enough period of time. Beta will start to be a memory. I'm starting to wonder, yeah. Shinmiri, have you seen a lot of new players come into your chat recently? I felt like in January there was a surge, and now we have Android phone coming that just happened 2 days ago. March 24th. That's like the first big piece of news we can talk about. It's just a quick thing. But Android phone coming, bringing in more new players. Have you seen like a surge of new players at all?
Yeah, so I think there was a surge with iPhone release late last year, and then also in January with the Netflix Witcher release. That actually brought a lot of people as well. But it's not immediate because it takes time for those fans to funnel through the Netflix show, then into probably Witcher 3, then search for Gwent and find the standalone Gwent, right? And for Android, I think, I mean, it's also not going to be completely immediate. I imagine newer players aren't going to immediately jump into Twitch streams. They'll take a little bit of time to try to discover the game for themselves. And then when they get more into it, they'll look up some streams and YouTube videos. So nothing like major right now, that obviously, but I think over the next couple of weeks, we'll see definitely increase in viewership.
Anybody
Hopefully.
Did anybody see the 1-star reviews on Reddit and stuff like that? People like,
Yeah.
Ceely, did you see there was one on top front page where it's like, this isn't, why couldn't they just take the one from Witcher 3 and balance it somehow? Like, somehow, that's where we
just balance it.
Just balance it somehow.
Exactly.
Oh man, I gotta put that. I'll try to remember to put the Reddit link. Well, I mean, I kind of just said it. Like, it was a 1-star review saying, this isn't what I expected. What? Just balance the original version, but I mean, that's kind of where we are, right? So yeah, and there was a video also from the chat here, Lee Mercado, saying Trynet. There is a video, or at least a clip of Trynet going through all the 1-star reviews for Android, and how it's just these people are expecting one thing, which is fair, I suppose, but just because you're expecting something doesn't mean it's not a great game, and you need to probably play it. And that review is not fair.
They were probably just expecting to be able to play the Witcher 3 version of Gwent on their phone.
I guess.
And that's
exactly.
as a single player game.
Yeah.
I suppose I guess that. I mean, expectations are a real thing. I mean, you expect stuff when you buy a product and you get it home and it doesn't do what you want. You'd probably rate it poorly, but it's just, I mean, for us, it just seems ridiculous, I suppose. But for some people, this is like the first time they ever heard of Gwent. It's the first time they've ever heard of Gwent as a standalone game. And I've met Witcher fans out in the wild that have recognized like a hat that I've been wearing or something like that. And I actually had it was an encounter it was in a Toronto bar where somebody actually recognized my hat, said, "Up for a round of Gwent?" And I assumed that the person knew who I was, but this person didn't actually know that Gwent was even a standalone game, just recognized the School of the Wolf. Well, I'm wearing a Witcher hat. Like, it's not this hat, but it was another hat. Recognized the School of the Wolf medallion, but still had no idea. This is not recently, but it also was like 2 years after Gwent was released. So anyway, there's people that are just figuring it out. And to all those people, welcome. Maybe you just found a podcast or a YouTube channel or streamers that you wanted to watch, and here they are. So before we get into the big Gwent news that was released this week, actually Friday of last week, I just wanted to say that this episode is recorded live at twitch.tv/McBearded. You can find this episode at youtube.com/c/McBeard. And if you're watching it there right now, let me know what you think in the comments. If you liked it, show me and tell me by liking and subscribing while you're there. And this show is made possible by the Commandos. Thank you for supporting the show through thick and thin on patreon.com/commandershorn. All right, here's the meat of the show. I've been dying to talk to really everybody about this kind of stuff because I love new content. And while we haven't had an announcement for a huge new expansion, we have had an announcement. It was really Jason Slama's appearance on the Merchants of Novigrad, just having a little presentation prepared. 6 new leaders. Did either of you expect that we would see something like this kind of in a non-dev stream presentation? But I mean, at the same time, we understand that these are strange days, right? Strange days of working from home and stuff. But do you think that this was the news for Gwent Masters? Because big news doesn't usually have the same, this doesn't have the same gravity of most of the news that they do at official events, like expansions. And we didn't get to see the Gwent Masters news because it was postponed. Do you guys think that this could have been that news? I'm going to pitch this one to Ceely first.
All right. I don't think this was probably part of it. I do think that a lot of things changed really fast, obviously because of the situation that's been going on. So I feel like this was maybe a part of it, or something that was planned but maybe wasn't going to be reviewed before or like revealed before. It actually hit just like the Fury expansion kind of just came out of nowhere in a way. So yeah, that's what I would think.
My guess would be that it was this in combination with the Android release. I think the Android release was probably the biggest thing that they were going to try to promote
It's true,
during
yeah.
Masters. I don't think there was originally going to be an expansion coming soon because that sort of stuff doesn't change that quickly. That's got to be planned way ahead of time, right? So
Yeah.
I think Jason said that the plan is to have 2 expansions this year, one in summer and one in winter. I think that's probably been their plan for a long time. So yeah, I think it was the leader balance patch and mainly Android.
Yeah, so last year seems very ambitious in hindsight, 4 expansions, and this was the first year. 2019 was the first year that we saw any expansions outside of like the what was kind of not really an expansion but was like Homecoming or Thronebreaker. Actually, the Thronebreaker editions were also in 2019, so you could look at this like between these leaders, the 2 expansions that we're expecting, and I believe there has been news swirling around that leader cards will be something at some point that could be 4 content drops, which could be close to 4 expansions, which, anything that drastically changes the meta like 6 leaders would, that's exciting enough for me. It doesn't have to be a whole expansion, I suppose, because 4 expansions actually kind of started to get tough to keep up with. There's a lot changing.
I agree. I agree. I think you don't need 100 new cards to shake things up and make the game feel fresh.
And the expansions were getting smaller and smaller as well. So I think 2 meaty expansions would be very well received. But this is going to be 6 new leaders. So if you didn't see it, let's see if I can just quickly and with a lot of finesse just get it on the screen real quick, just so I can kind of show how this was presented to us. Don't mind the imager ads that are on the other side of the screen here, but we were presented with these sort of PowerPoint-esque slides here with new leaders. This is Skellige's Blaze of Glory. I'm just going to quickly read them off here for the audio crowd. Blaze of Glory is a new Skellige leader, 15 provisions added to your deck. Order, move a Skellige unit from your deck to your graveyard, then damage an enemy unit by its power. Uprising is the new Northern Realms ability. For 14 provisions added to your deck, on order you can boost an allied unit by 1 with 4 charges. Once all charges are used up, spawn and play Illyrian Scytheman. Hidden Cash, this is a big one for Syndicate. 15 provisions on order, gain 3 coins on round start refresh, and your hordes cost 3 less coins to trigger. What a passive. Then we have Nilfgaard, 13 provisions, Imposter. On order, lock an enemy unit, spawn its base copy on the opposite row, and boost it by 2 on your side of the board. And then Mahakam Forge, Scoia'tael's 15 provision point leader ability. On order, spawn and play Tempering, which is a Dwarven Nature 4 provision spell that boosts a unit by 5 and gives it 2 armor if it's a dwarf. Actually, I'm just kind of riffing that off the top of my head. I think that's right. And all dwarves in your starting deck get 1 armor. Finally, Monsters, Overwhelming Hunger, 13 provisions. On order, destroy an allied unit and spawn an Ekamara on its row and boost it by the destroyed unit's power with 3 charges. So these are pretty cool, pretty different as well. And the way I saw it, I felt like each of these was kind of playing to potentially a weakness that the faction may have been lacking, either from archetypical support, if that is a word, or making better use of like kind of the library of cards that you want your leader to have some sort of, I guess, general appeal. So that's a lot of talking by me. Ceely, what was your first reaction when you looked at these leaders? Did you talk about it on stream right away? Did you just kind of process it on the podcast? Did you watch it live? How was it for you?
I wasn't able to watch the podcast live, so a lot of it came from streaming, and then Chad obviously talking about it and asking my opinion, and that's kind of how we started discussing the whole thing. For me as a whole, it was very exciting having these new leaders. In a way, I kind of would have maybe expected first some of the other leaders that already existed to be reworked. However, getting these new leaders is really exciting. Like you said, it does, even if it's not an expansion, it does add a lot of content to to the game, and a lot of new stuff and new types of decks and even archetypes that get support through this, which I find very, very interesting. I think I do like all of these leaders as a whole, but yeah.
Any of them stand out as your favorite?
The most interesting to me would be the monsters one, as well as the Skellig one. I like those two the most, and I think that the NR one might be something that could surprise us. Because when I looked at it initially, it did look a little bit underwhelming. But yeah, I do think it might have some hidden power in there.
Yeah, I'm down with the NR one actually. Shinmiri, what was your hot take? What was your hot take on this list of leaders?
Yeah, it was exciting to see 6 new leaders. I wasn't expecting to get more leaders again, like in the near future. But I think they all, like you said, serve a purpose to kind of bolster some weaker archetypes for their factions. And we have to remember, it's not just leaders coming with this balance patch. It's also there's also going to be card changes. They already confirmed that they're reworking a number of Dwarven cards for Scoia'tael and some unspecified Skellige card changes as well, and maybe even for other factions we don't know at this point. So it's going to be more than just tacking on 6 new leaders in terms of like shaking up the meta. When it comes to the leaders, though, that they've shown, I think I really like the NR one. I think it's gonna, like Ceely said, surprise some people with how strong it is. It's kind of like a different version of Meave, and I feel like Meave's greatest weakness was that you're forced to use her and spread out her ability over the course of 3 rounds, over a long period of time. And in a short round, you don't get any real, or you don't get much real value from her. Whereas Uprising is going to have that flexibility of being good in a short round as well as in a long round if you need it to.
Yeah. Let's just start talking. We can just start talking about Uprising a little bit more. One of the reasons why I think that Uprising has potential is it doesn't seem too dissimilar to Imperial Formation in that you are able to protect an engine or put something out of reach of the opponent, and in Northern Realms case, trigger any sort of inspired or formation-based zeal or anything like that. Obviously, Northern Realms has a lot that they can do with boost, which is why this is actually a pretty tame or charge-based ability. But I think that the general concept of being able to boost and protect, and then at the very end have a giant payoff, which you either can build your board around or you can just kind of execute by spreading your boosts around. It seems very versatile, but I think that much like Imperial Formation, there might end up being some sort of dirty combo like protecting Skellen, protecting Damien kind of thing where, you get Donmir down as your defender, and now I'm able to play something that's very dangerous, but I'm also able to protect it. And the next turn, if I don't use all my boosts, I can also boost again. Another drawback of Meave is the cooldown. You have to kind of, if you want to get the most value out of your leader, you have to kind of pick and choose your moments, and sometimes you don't have the opportunity. The best time to play on your boosted inspired unit may need to be a turn you need to react to your opponent.
Exactly. So one thing, something like you said, like Imperial Formation for Nilfgaard, protecting multiple threats with your leader ability, like something, for example, what's the card called? Rayla, Black Rayla.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She's really strong. She's doing 2 damage every turn if she's inspired, and your leader helps not only trigger that inspire or activate that inspire, and also protect her from damage removal. Like 6 is a lot harder to remove than 5. And if you know that your opponent's running 6 damage removal, like Decoction or Parasite, you can even use 2 charges and boost her to 7.
Yeah. And I think, Ceely, do you think you said it might surprise people, and I do think that it's good. I think people are sleeping on it. I took a poll in my chat.
Definitely.
It was not one of the most popular ones. Are you going to be testing it out first thing, Ceely? Is that number one?
I have been playing a lot more NR lately, so I do think I'm going to give it a try, definitely. I especially like the flexibility that was mentioned earlier that you can get with it. You can protect your engines, you can have synergies, it can be tempo even, which seems really nice. But yeah, in my chat, when we discussed this, it did feel like, or like even looking at Reddit, it felt like a lot of people didn't really enjoy the NR ability, but yeah, it does offer something new with supporting the boost inspiration archetype, definitely. And as well, people were kind of sleeping on wildcard for a while until Tailbot brought it to Challenger 5, and after that it saw a lot of place. I do think this might be a similar kind of surprise leader that we get.
It could be, and Northern Realms needs a surprise, I think. Baby Joss is
Yeah.
in the chat, by the way. Shout out to Baby Joss. I think everything we're saying is pretty true about the Northern Realm ability, but he's saying that it just seems boring. I think that the Lyrian Scytheman payoff is synergistic to the ability. I also think that the Uprising kind of flavor of the Pitchfork it kind of makes sense to me. I don't think it's weird. It's like you have Meave's Royal Inspiration and Full Test's Royal Inspiration, and then you have the power of the Scytheman. It just doesn't seem like a leader, I think. So maybe I gotta get where Baby Justice is coming
Right.
from. But if we're talking about payoffs with leaders, let's talk about the Skellige one, because Shinmiri, your I would say biggest gripe with the Skellige ability is that unlike Blood Money and unlike Vicious Slash, if there's overkill, you get no compensation. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, exactly. Like one of the best synergy and targets for this Blaze of Glory ability is to move like a Yuta, a 12-point Yuta from your deck into your graveyard, deal 12 damage, and then set up for that Sigdrifa to res that Yuta from your graveyard. But it's not that easy to find a 12 damage target to get that much value from your leader. So I would love to see if there would be a possibility to amend this ability and have like a compensation for overkilling your opponent's unit, maybe in the form of giving armor to an allied unit, have synergy with like Draco Turtle or even like Priest, just getting value from self wounding. I don't know, but time will tell, right? Like we don't know all the card changes either that's coming with this balance update, and possibly even with the next expansion, maybe they're looking ahead and preparing future synergies for things like that.
Right on. It's cool because the Skellige leader for me, like one of the reasons why I liked it is it's a shout out to like old school Madman Lugos. Back in the day, Madman Lugos had the ability of discarding a card from your deck and then damaging a unit by that amount. And I kind of like that because I also think the monsters ability is also a shout out to old school Ekamara, which was the old school, what is it, Harpy now, where it's just play and consume. Ekamara also had resilience at the time, but it was one of the old school consume after. Well, I mean, Barbagazi was the old school, but then Ekamara was the flagship. I'm actually forgetting everything. I think Ekamara was the one that did.
You remember more stuff from beta than I do, to be honest.
For the most part, chat, help me out. I'm pretty sure Ekamara was like the most popular consume.
It was
meta.
Dorgary into Ekimara, I think. Yeah, with resilience.
Yeah,
that
right.
was the broken combo.
Yeah,
and
right.
Skellige would do that multiple times and have
Dorgray.
like 12 carryover.
Dorgray.
That's like I don't remember much from beta, but stuff like that I have PTSD from, I'll remember.
Yeah, promoted Roach. I mean that's like as old as it gets, I think. Ceely, were you underwhelmed by the Skellige leader, or I mean, for a lot of people, I think that it ended up at the bottom of the list for people. I think that there's cool synergy,
really?
But
okay. Yeah. To me, it feels like it has a lot of flexibility with the removal being so precious right now, and having that removal kind of available at all times if you really, really need it. I think that's a really good thing. You can always choose to go for something like if your opponent doesn't have a 12 on the board, like with Yuta, you would need in order to get the full amount of value from it. You could play like a Morkvarg. Morkvarg's a 5-point body on the board, and he's also 5-point damage, and he's thinning. So that feels like a pretty solid choice to go for as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's cool stuff, and there's a follow up. Like, it's a cool ability, no doubt, but Skellige has to sacrifice the other leader abilities to choose it. And I think that's something I wanted to talk about a little bit later, because it's definitely an on-point Skellige ability, but, when you can only include one of these things. I'm going to throw this right back to you, Ceely, because you said that the monsters ability was probably something that you're most interested in. What about it really appeals to you?
For me, it feels like it is probably going to be a better Death Wish leader in general, compared to the Death's Shadow that we have right now. And there are a lot of pretty solid gold Death Wish cards that you can now play with it, which to me seems really interesting. Has a little bit of Death Wish synergy as well as even vampire synergy maybe. But yeah.
Here's my, I mean, I agree with you. A lot of people were saying that it's like, oh, this is just better than Death Shadow. This is just the better Deathwish leader. But you could argue that this is kind of, I mean, this is like the way that you have the extra charges, and you have so much flexibility with the Deathwish because you have it in charges. Something to me makes me feel like this is the first real Deathwish leader. I mean, Death Shadow now is different. It's just a different card now. It's about duplicating a card, triggering a Deathwish, and then kind of bringing that unit back specifically to use again. And I feel like that's becoming more and more what Death Shadow is doing. Kikamura Queen combos, or I guess other things you could do it with, like Maruna and stuff like that. But now with that change to Death Shadow being a one-shot, Deathwish didn't really have like this level of support. I mean, this is play a Foglet, trigger it, thin your deck. Thinning isn't as great as it was, but it's still something you could do that you could just really never do before. Setting up is no longer a problem. You just don't have to set up. You just go for it.
I agree.
Right, yeah.
I think that this new leader, Overwhelming Hunger, is going to be the Deathwish leader, and Death Shadow is going to be more of like a combo leader, like you said, with Kikimori Queen, or with like just replaying Karen Thier, getting 3 copies of one big win condition in your deck, whether that's Kikimori Queen or I don't know the Living Armor or
Ruin.
Keltullus, like something crazy like that, right? And when you're just playing a good old fair Deathwish deck, you'll be playing Overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if you're trying
and
to
not
break
just
something,
that, not just like activating Deathwishes, but Overwhelming Hunger also removes stuff like poison. It's a great poison counter, which is really something important to note. So it's flexible in multiple ways.
Yeah. I mean, if you really, really need to, you could eat a cow carcass now that Raw Tosser is kind of back.
Yeah.
Always thinking about ways to stop cow carcass now. It's like I got to remember how to deal with this card. So what does that leave? What did we? One thing we didn't talk about actually when we were talking about Skellige is that we do know that some changes are actually coming to Skellige as well. That kind of reshape. I mean, we don't know a lot. We know that the Bear Abomination is going to be 6 strength, which is a nice buff to Arnvald. The Fury, what is it called? Sacrificial Fury or Savage Fury, Totem, as well as Fanatic, stuff like that. So that changes a lot of stuff as well for the Bear Abomination. And I think there is. Yeah, I think.
Do we know that about the Bear Abomination? I have to. I'm like so worried now after what happened with Pumpkin.
Yes,
I have to like double check.
I'm certain. The reason why I'm certain about this is because I actually watched a lot of your stream, Shinmiri, on the day that the leaders were revealed, and you talked about it then. So either you leaked it or it was out there. I mean, I'm pretty sure that is out there. I mean, that was definitely part of it. But we won't talk about the other stuff because that stuff was. I mean, there's LEEKs and then there's LEAKs, and they're very, very different things. But we can move on because the other thing that we do know a little bit more about, I am tiptoeing around the other stuff because I know the Bear Abomination thing, but that's my slam dunk. I know that one. But we can talk about Mahakam Forge. Mahakam Forge, there's a little bit more. This is a bigger one because this has larger kind of repercussions because this is showing a little bit more of an identity change, an identity shift to Scoia'tael, making it more like, as opposed to just everything having harmony and everything just sort of working with boosts. Now we're looking at elves kind of dealing the damage, dryads getting the boosts with harmony, and dwarves being more of a armor-based, tough, sturdy, and perhaps resilient, either the literal definition of resilient or the mechanical definition of carryover resilient. But that was the word that was chosen when talking about dwarves in the future. So we saw a lot of stuff. I'm going to have to bring up the changes to like Yarpen and stuff like that. I'm going to bring up the Reddit thread just to get it for sure. But quick takes on kind of the shift of dwarves into an armor-based build. Ceely, do you think that this is going to be kind of a cooler look for dwarves?
Definitely. They kind of, like you said, they disappeared as an archetype from the whole Scoia'tael, I guess, faction identity, if you will. We haven't seen them since they were pretty OP on the ladder for one point. It was only dwarves almost, and then they nerfed it pretty hard, and after that we haven't really seen that work, and now they're getting this whole identity and definitely their own leader, which will bring a lot more dwarves to the ladder. It's hard to tell because we haven't seen a lot of the other changes. I think we only got 2 dwarves that were changed.
The Pyrotech and Yarpen.
Pyrotech, yeah, that one, and Yarpen. So it is a little bit difficult to tell, but definitely interesting, and we will see dwarves back for sure, I think.
Yeah, because it changes the overall resilience of like everything that you would put in. It means that there's an extra piece of armor to chew through at all times, very specifically. And yeah, Yarpen is just loosely, Yarpen Zigrin is now kind of like he eats the armor every turn and gains and boosts. So all the armor you apply to him, he then grows. And the Pyrotech deals damage to himself. So if you were to put armor on him, he would not do that, and you would get the sheer value of his removal. I think it's a 4 point ping as well. So I think that Mahakam Forge is pretty cool, and I think that the actual playing of the tempering, much like the Uprising, seems a little bit, I guess, less like leader, less like heavy, like a leader is on the field and charging you with strength. It's more like you know, we're just all a bunch of dwarves. We're all ready for fighting. We all know what we're doing here. Let's just get the forge going, and that'll be enough. Do you think that this is going to actually change the way dwarves were played, Shinmiri, or do you think that it's still going to be the same idea as before? Like the dwarven nerf was pretty heavy-handed when you look at how elves really haven't been touched, but they've largely been riding the same power wave. Do you think dwarves have a potential to really come back here as a long run deck?
Well, first of all, I want to say I like the flavor of the change to dwarves with the armor and like when you think of dwarves, you think of sturdy group of hard workers that that they're armored. It's tough to kill them. It's really flavorful, and it's really hard to talk about the dwarf changes because there's so much that we don't know.
That's true.
I can't even evaluate the leader because it's all based on how good dwarves are going to be as an archetype. But I do think that dwarven decks under this new leader are probably still going to play similar decks to the past, where you throw in almost every dwarf in the game into your deck. You probably won't want to play that many non-dwarves, because the big boon to this leader is that every unit you play, if you play only dwarves, right, every unit you play comes down with armor. So you're definitely getting value from the armor somewhere, because your opponent's going to have removal or damage, whether it's targeted damage or random damage. But some of that armor is going to translate into points for you, and you're probably going to play threats. I'm guessing with dwarves taking on the archetype or the theme of armor, that some of them are going to be threats that your opponent will want to remove, but they'll have to get through the armor to do so.
For sure. 2 more to quickly talk about. We do have Imposter as well. This is the Nilfgaard ability. So for 13 provisions, you can lock a unit, and then you create it on your side of the board. So this is an interesting one for me, because I've heard a lot of people talk about the combo potential for Imposter. Specifically, like I heard a lot of like really interesting operator combos, but that doesn't sound like too unlike what Enslave is able to do. And Enslave right now actually has a higher provision, gives you higher provision allotment than Imposter. And I think that there's a lot of cool combos that obviously stand out, because this involves locking a unit on your opponent's side of the board, which I think is probably the coolest thing, because that's bringing Radovid back, kind of. Like being able to lock with a leader ability is definitely something that has been missing for a while. And I think that being able to lock that unit and then create on your side of the board it's obviously got, it shows right here on the little slide that Jason Slama and Merchants of Novigrad had here. You obviously have great combos with Vincent, Vanamar, and of course creating extra locks matters to Master of Disguise and such. But it seems like the combo potential is good, but compared to Enslave, do you think that the deck building, requirement for Enslave is, I think that's why it has higher provisions and Imposter has lower. You don't have the deck building requirement, but you're paying for it. I mean, I like this ability, but I think 13 might be low. What do you think? Ceely, what do you think about this one? Do you think that the provisions might be too low on Imposter?
Potentially. I mean, the thing with Enslave is you get the point, you get the tempo swing that you don't get in the same way with playing Imposter, because you don't actually, yeah, there's not as much tempo when you create the same leader, as well as it is not spawn and play, so it doesn't trigger stuff like, I guess, assimilate or these types of things. So I could see the provisions could be maybe even higher for this one, but I do feel like the combo potential is a bit scary, so therefore it's probably lower. If you think about a mirror where you would have all these Damians going around and you create them, you purify them, all of this this
Yeah.
stuff seems a little bit crazy. So I do think it's a fun combo leader, but I don't see it as super competitive. Here I think Enslave would probably be better for that. Yeah.
I like the potential of like stealing the defender, right? I mean, you don't take out the defender, but you gain one, like because that's something that just even if it's on your side of the board, as soon as it's on there, it's active, things like that. And obviously there was the comparison that Shinmiri. I'll let you talk about it. I called it kind of like a Graydon light. Obviously, the power of Graydon is significantly higher, but the idea that you can combo with Vanamar at a much lower provision cost. Obviously, you don't get the payoff in the same way, but it is kind of a straight up removal combo, much like Wildcard Fistek or Wildcard Bounty used to be in the removal standpoint. But the points on your side of the board is probably a little bit more varied. You do get the body, and you do get the removal. I don't know. Do you think that playing around this will be easier or harder than Enslave? Is sort of the roundabout question that I'm getting to in my head.
I think it'll be easier to play around this than Enslave. I think this ability, it's more situational, in my opinion, than Enslave, and it's also more dependent on the meta. There are fewer targets where this is a really, really good leader, but there are some targets where this leader is kind of nuts, like Damien, Ceely said. So this leader is going to have the most variance out of all the leaders that we've seen released in this new balance patch. And I think at first glance, a lot of people thought that this is going to be really OP, really strong, and unfun to play against. But I think that with time, this will probably end up being one of the least powerful. Not necessarily the least played, but I think it's going to be one of the least powerful leaders in this balance patch, along with the Skellige one. That's my guess.
Yeah, I guess out of the 6, it's true, but I mean that's still not. I think the 6 leaders are strong enough to say that even though I don't know, I think I have a higher opinion of it. I think I have a higher opinion of this ability. I think that
it's going to be tough to tell because of the meta, right? We don't know what the meta is going to look like. If the meta has multiple great targets for this, then it could be really good. It could be much better than I'm expecting.
Okay, let's just talk about the last one here. This is the Syndicate one. This was probably the one that stood out to me as could be the strongest one. The Monsters one is obviously very strong, but of course this is the Syndicate Hidden Cache, and Hidden Cache. Oh, my browser is not showing, and now it is. Gain 3 coins on order every round, and your hordes cost 3 less coins to trigger. So it just seems like it's just a mountain of value. You get 9 coins over the course of the game, and you also essentially every horde ability that you could possibly be playing early is automatically triggered because you just add the coins, you drop your horde, and then whatever that number is between your 3 coins or the minus 3 coins on that ability, it's triggering. It's basically you're always on, you're always running right here. So this one to me stands out as quite possibly the most powerful ability out of all of them. Do you agree or disagree, Ceely?
I would definitely agree. To me, the passive seems really, really strong with the current cards that we have. For me, the thing that I immediately thought about was Sol and the Peaches, which seems a bit scary. But then again, we might see some nerfs to those cards. I know Sol is already kind of talked about, so there might be something to that. But yes, the passive seems really strong. Obviously, this is a leader where the downside to it is probably a short round, but it seems the strongest to me as well. It stood out to me as that, definitely, at first glance.
What about you, Shinmiri?
Yeah, it seems really strong. It seems like the strongest one to me as well. The only kind of caveat to that I see right now is that Syndicate's typically a faction that wants a long round. And because this leader is formatted as like you get refreshed ability every round, it's incentivized to play 3 rounds.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit like maybe a leader or a deck that wants to do 2 different things at once, because typically Syndicate wants to just go to that long round and have a perfect hand where they have the right ratio of spenders to profit generating, and then they have like answers like Philippa, Defender, and so on and so forth.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a leader that we are probably going to want to push. We're going to probably want to push it a lot, knock out the engines, and just try to get them to go into a shorter round, and just hope that they don't have like the Luisa Savola. Or I guess we can beat Luisa Savola in that case. But it seems pretty good. It stands out to me like it just seems pretty strong, and I think out of all of them, I think I got to give it to Hidden Cache for the best one, for as far as like the strongest one. But I think my favorite one might be, I think the Nilfgaard one might be my favorite one. I think that and that's saying a lot because I'm not a big fan of playing Nilfgaard. And it's interesting, Shinmiri, you said you don't think it's going to be like it's going to be like not fun to play against, or it's not going to be so powerful that it'll be not fun to play against. But I think that a lot of the stuff that Nilfgaard does, this is why a lot of people find it very polarizing as a faction. It doesn't have to be powerful to make you not like it. Like,
no, it doesn't.
Traherne and Viper
just...
Witcher and Shylard and that kind of stuff doesn't have to always hit to make you just like angry, bribery.
Yeah, and I don't think this leader is as bad as of an offender as like Traherne and Viper Witcher, because there's not really that RNG factor to it. It's just about what you're playing and if you're gonna give them a good leader target or not.
Right on.
Just
yeah.
more controllable.
So the big question, just to kind of round out this conversation, and to round out this conversation on the podcast here, the big question was that, like, not every faction has a really wide selection of competitive leaders. So to choose, like I talked about with Imposter, or I can't remember which one it was, but the idea that if you're taking Imposter, you're not taking Imperial Formation, and if you're taking Blaze of Glory, you're not taking Second Wind or Arnjolf or something like that. These are dominant abilities competitively right now, so you'd have to see a pretty large shift in deck building to accommodate these new abilities. So which faction is really or potentially benefiting the most? And we don't know the meta, we don't know everything, but what faction do we think is really benefiting the most with the idea that to add one of these new leaders and build around it, they're not giving up something that's allowing them to be as competitive as they are?
Northern Realms.
Northern Realms, you think? Yeah, I think there
are 3. In my opinion, it would be Northern Realms, Monsters, and Syndicate. But I think Northern Realms may be the most. Right now, Northern Realms doesn't feel like it has a good leader.
Sometimes
I don't know. You're the NR faction ambassador. What do you think?
I mean, I really like Mobilize. I do think that's fine. I think it's a fine leader, and I played it just because, I mean, I had my own personal moral issue with Pincer Maneuver because I just felt like it was just so pushed. I just didn't like playing it, so I played Mobilize even when Pincer was in a good place, and I've gotten pro rank in the last 2 seasons playing Mobilize in the like the last 3 ranks, and it's always felt good enough. And I never played Caretaker Siege. Like, I didn't do anything like that. I'm not saying it's great, but I'm saying that I've really enjoyed playing Mobilize. And usually between a singleton version where you're just kind of mobilizing the Treb or the battering ram if you like to live on the edge, or just playing a normal kind of Henselt Mobilize list, I
think with mobilization right now, it's like you're forced to take it because it's the only thing that isn't bad.
Yeah.
I don't think it's great. I think it's like a necessity that you just have to settle with. And I think Uprising is going to give NR a really good option in addition to mobilization.
I mean, I think that like mobilization is also it allows you to develop 2 engines at once, which Uprising more so allows you to protect a single thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I also think that Full Test is a considerable. Sorry, Full Test. What is it? Inspired. Sorry, what's
Inspired Zeal?
Inspired Zeal is what's Meves then? Royal Inspiration. Got it. Inspired Zeal. I think that you have to build a different kind of deck around it, but having those, like being able to pick those rounds to have that extra power boost 3 times, and like running stuff like Ensei Selkirk, and I mean, I'm trying to remember with the old school. Like, obviously, there was Blue Stripes. You'd run it with Full Test and stuff like that. You can try memes with War Elephant, but these cards, like the power in Full Test and Northern Realms Bronzes, seems like you could do it. Mobilize just seems better because Siege is a really good card, I think. So I don't know. That's where I'm at on that one. I think that it's probably true though. The most benefit with regarding monsters, it's interesting that this one has the most benefit because I think that Erica's Swarm and well, Blood Scent as well, but also what's the other one I'm forgetting? Not Thrive. I think maybe it's just Erica's Swarm and Blood Scent. Like they seem pretty competitive, but giving up those doesn't really change the decks too much because I think monsters is more card based as far as how strong they are. Being able to like have extra stuff with Adrenaline Rush and the Erica Swarm and do that stuff. Yeah, I think that monsters has the biggest benefit because it improves their library of cards so much more.
Yeah, I don't think it's about saying that the new Overwhelming Hunger is going to replace Arrakis Swarm. It's just that you can now play a different archetype.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Arrakis Swarm will still be good, but now we can play Deathwish archetype, and you can't play Deathwish archetype with Arrakis Swarm. You can't play Deathwish archetype with the Blood Scent. So it's about having more options now.
For sure. Yeah, and with Syndicate, it goes without saying. It's just that's a totally different archetype that seems to have like a lot of power in it. It's different.
Syndicate doesn't rely on its leader unless you're playing Graydon, and there have been like more recently the competitive versions with Blood Money, right? And Blood Money, the deck isn't built around the leader at all, so it's easy to switch that deck and just put Hidden Cash instead of Blood Money.
Yeah, you're just trying to kind of put together your point salad with Syndicate, however you can do it. I would love to know what the chat thinks. I know I polled my chat on the day of, and I believe, I think it was Imposter was like 1 point ahead of the Monsters one. Like those were the two that people were most interested in. And I remember saying that the Syndicate one was my least favorite one because it seemed like the most brainless one. Not that it wasn't strong, but it just seems like put your Horde cards in, they work. You need the money, here it is. Like you don't. It kind of takes a lot of the intricacy that Syndicate is known for, which might be a good thing for people who are approaching the faction for the first time. But as far as the chat, which one are you most scared of? Which one are you most excited for? And do you have any questions for my guests, Ceely and Shinmiri? Let me know as we wrap up the podcast here. We got about 10 minutes. Chat has been summoned. It's true, Sushant 10. But I'm going to just ask a quick off question just while chat asks some questions. Shinmiri, I know you've been playing Ori and Will-o'-the-Wisps, as have I. Ceely, what's your off game right now? Are you playing any great RPGs, platformers, puzzle games when you're not playing Gwent?
Well, I've been finally streaming and trying to finish Ori 1 so that I can get to the second one. I'm really excited about it. I've kept it spoiler-free completely. So yeah, I can't wait to finish that one on stream and then go on to the next one. Yeah, excited for that.
Right on. Yeah, and there's good stuff coming at Resident Evil 3. I'm going to be playing that for sure. There's some good stuff still coming that hasn't been delayed yet. So we got a question here from Persian Baby Boy. Ask Lord Shinmiri where he got that jacket. I know where he got that jacket. What jacket are you wearing? That's your Gwent Challenger jacket, right, Shinmiri?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the Silver Crown one, yeah.
I got it from Challenger number 4. The Skellige one, the first one that I attended as an analyst. So it's awesome. Yeah, I love it. It's great. Very comfortable.
Yeah, it's
very fashionable as well.
It's got those snaps. We got a question here from Kate the Great. Ceely, how do you come up with deck names, and what is your favorite deck to play with this season? I'm not sure if the asking is about the seasonal mode or just general competitive, but yeah, well, talk about your deck names. Why does Kate the Great think that they're so great?
Yeah, I wonder that. Sometimes they are very creative. Sometimes they're not that creative. It's whatever comes to my mind first, and I just go with it. A little bit of a play on words sometimes, maybe, and yeah. And then my favorite deck to play this season has been a Drog Siege deck. And it's been really fun. I've been playing it a lot just because you don't see a lot of it on ladder. I still like it a lot. And then, of course, vampires as well. That Laugh is something that I've enjoyed playing this season. Yeah.
With like, what is the top end for your Deadlaugh? Do you play like a Death Wish combo or like Living Armor or?
No, just full on vampires with Blood Scent.
Oh, full on like Crimson Curse, full on
Yes.
vampires.
Oh no, not that full on.
You know but that actually might like getting a bunch of getting a big high power vampire on the board is now like it. You can actually play that card potentially. Like it seems like you just play the Ekamara for whatever number it is, and then you get that many turns, and you do that in the same turn. Is it crazy? Is it crazy that could have a place? I wonder.
Speaking about the Crimson Curse, you can get more vampires now with the new Overwhelming Hunger Leader.
Yeah.
One of the weaknesses of Crimson Curse was your opponent just kills all your vampires and you keep missing.
Yeah, you have to set up Dettlaff first or Katakan for a giant vampire that gives you the turns you need. It's just like you're trying to make it work, and now it's just like, you know, if you have all your charges or if you have enough charges, just go for it. I mean, it's you have to pay the cost to put it in your deck, but I think if I was memeing, I would feel much like safer that I'd be coming up with like winning highlights and like the moments that I would be building the deck for, not to be just so disappointed by the control.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. We have a question here from Cruise Controller. For both, what do we think about the current faction identities and which has the strongest faction identity out of all the factions? If I had to just think about it right now, the strongest faction identity. I mean, if I think that Nilfgaard's faction identity is frustrating opponents, I think that they got it. They got a good one there. And I also think that Monsters is just the way that they have the fragile big points and that Death Wish and Consume is now going to be like really realized. I think that Monsters is probably going to be really secure in their identity. And the jury's out for Scoia'tael. Shinmiri, what do you think?
I think Monsters has a really good identity. It's simple, but it's also nuanced. They've got like the big boys that just you slam points and they thrive and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you've got Death Wish, obviously, and the Swarm. Like their identity is pretty fleshed out, and they've got multiple competitive archetypes right now. And like you also like you said, Nilfgaard, their identity is just messing with their opponents. Like whether it's to put them on tilt or to like play their deck better than they can themselves, they do a pretty good job of that.
What about you, Ceely? What do you think? What faction do you think really is capturing an identity that you can really get behind?
I do think Monsters is probably up there because of you guys kind of explained it well, and then I would still say that NR still has its faction identity very strong, even though it has been a bit on the down low for a while, but definitely still a strong faction identity. A lot of people enjoy NR still, but even though they haven't been so strong, a lot of people are looking for some buffs and stuff, which is, I think they have a strong faction identity as a whole. Yeah.
I think Northern Realms might be suffering the most just because they have like they have a bunch of cards that care about mages, but they don't really have anything that's like pushing that. They have a bunch of cards that care about charges, but that just kind of seems like something you might include. You don't have to, like your Reinforced Ballista, maybe you're putting that in there, but all the cards that really have like charge-based abilities that are actually quite strong, like Hubert and Shawnee, it seems like they just don't really have. There's one leader that does charges, and we know how that's been going. Just not a very popular leader in Stockpile. So I think that Northern Realms probably could stand to have the biggest infusion of playability to their collection of cards right now. It hasn't always felt like that. It's felt like Skellige has been suffering a lot like in the past, and now they're becoming a bit more realized with better discard options, better beast options. Specifically, I think that the beast stuff they do with the crows is my favorite right now. I think Skellige's identity based around like all the crow stuff and like the way that the discard package feels when I like that stuff a lot right now, personally. Gulo. I'm gonna throw this one out here. What's up, Gulo? Gulo X2. Is Shinmiri dreading the day he has to premium Parasite? I know the answer to this question.
So Parasite is like the most disturbing premium to me because of the thing in the eye. I can't even stand looking at it or thinking about it. And then with the introduction of channel point rewards, I added a 500k channel point reward premium Parasite. But I'm not dreading it as badly because I haven't guaranteed how long it will stay premium.
Yeah, because you said you would just disenchant it. It's just the fact that you had to look at it for a second. The return is not very high, but for Gulo, that could just be the best second of his life, watching you wince like slug eyeball. All right, Pope of Novigrad is going to be pitching the last question to us. What are your? This is just a bare bones question that is just it's always a good question to ask people on the podcast. But what are your favorite cards? Pope of Novigrad calling out that he knows that mine is Triss Telekinesis, and historically, I have always liked that card. I think the most. I think that Triss Telekinesis has been one of my favorite cards of all time, especially that she has pretty much remained unchanged since her inception is another great reason why I like her. But Ceely, what is your favorite card? If you had to pick one,
Just the way it works,
just
or
the way it works.
art-wise?
Are you excited to put it in a
Ooh.
deck? Like with Triss Telekinesis, I'm like, all right, how can I make this work? How is she going to work in the meta? Stuff like that.
That is difficult. I think for every faction there is that one specific card that I really like. But I would say right now, as I've been playing so many vampires, I really like the Oriana card. It's just art wise and how the way it works. It feels really powerful when you play it. You can sometimes your opponent loses count of the bleeds and all of that stuff, and maybe goes down 2 cards because she actually is really powerful when you play her. And I enjoy that card a lot. So I'm going to say it's my favorite right now.
The old mirrored effect, boosting on your side, bleeding on theirs. Shinmiri, what do you think as far as like just kind of mechanic wise or even just art wise?
Mechanic wise, my favorite cards mechanic wise have always been cards that change the way people play the game from the normal intuitive way to something like really out there, like non-standard. And that's stuff like Villain Trettenmirth. When Villain Trettenmirth comes on the board, sometimes you'll go crazy and like boost your opponent's units on their side of the board. That's something you would never do, but it could be actually the right move that wins you the game. Like I love these really unintuitive moments that you see in the moment, and then boom, that was like the 5 million IQ win condition. Along the lines of that, I also really like Count Caldwell, but more so the old version when he countered himself. Right now, he's not really viable because he doesn't count himself, and it's too risky when you play him that he'll betray you and go to the other side of the board. But back in the day when he was actually meta, I had a lot of fun games with Count Caldwell because you incentivize your opponent to like go super tall to protect their Caldwell, and then you can bait them into making overcommitting onto one unit and then like using tall removal or reset or something like that.
Yeah.
To punish them.
Well, one of my other favorite cards is Geralt of Rivia, just because it's just sometimes your opponent just does not respect it. And you can just, sometimes you can just take and if you force your opponent into a certain situation, playing monsters, your opponent will try to maybe outdo your dominance and then just play right into something like that. But Caldwell, I mean, I like the flavor of the current version, like the idea that he respects the strength and he goes to where he's protected as opposed to just like showing up and being the biggest guy there. I don't know. I think that,
sure.
I mean,
flavor wise,
it just seemed like it didn't make sense that he counted himself. The card itself is cool. I do think that the card is cool. I think that we need more cards like that. Villain Trettenmirth, though, more cards that just warp the board state, where you just are.
And I see
my plans have.
I see in chat Anti-Held saying, "Say Lippy, goddammit!" And
Lippy,
Lippy is one of my
best
favorite
example
cards for sure. He's probably like the other 2 cards that I mentioned, Villain Trettenmirth and Caldwell. I don't really play them right now, but Lippy I play a lot, and it's a very unique card that changes the way you deck build and the way that you play the game. So Lippy's definitely up there. I just thought that maybe that was too obvious of an answer.
It's funny. I was waiting for you to say it, but it's just the way you play, the way you deck build. It's really cool stuff. So, all right, guys, this is great. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to wrap it up right now. Thanks for the chat, for interacting and asking us a bunch of questions. It's always great to have chat bopping. And thanks so much for Ceely and Shinmiri for coming on and sharing their charming faces. Shinmiri and Ceely, in that order, where can people find you when you are streaming Gwent or whatever you're up to online?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitch at Shinmiri2, the number 2 at the end. I usually stream on weekdays. My schedule's a little bit wonky right now, but I usually start around like 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific time on weekdays. And we've been playing Gwent, and we've also been playing side games like Ori and the Will of the Wisps. And I think the next one we're going to start is Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. I've heard really good things about it.
Oops. Lost your... Yeah, Sekiro is... I need to play Neo. Because Neo 1 was like my cousin's favorite game of all time, and there's the sequel's out now. That's one I want to check out. Ceely, where can people find you when you're out there?
So you can find me on Twitch at Ceely with 2 C's. And yeah, I stream approximately 5 times a week. Saturdays I do variety and yeah, play games like Ori, for example. But yeah, other than that, it's just Gwent all the time.
Gwent all the time. That sounds about
Yeah.
right. That sounds about right. Also, Scottish Oatcakes is asking if you're streaming today. You've already streamed today, Ceely, right? And Shinmiri,
Yeah.
you're probably thinking about getting ready.
I am not sure. I need to check on something, but
Yeah.
I will try to tweet out if I do or if I don't.
All right, my friends. Well, whatever you get up to out there with the chat and with my guests here, whatever ends up being your entertainment, whatever you get up to, hope you take care out there. These are some trying times, of course. So call your parents, tell them you love them, and call your friends. They might miss you. And just remember, anybody who's helping you out there in the supply chain for food or keeping the people you love safe, just keep them in your hearts. And just remember that we're all in this together. Thanks, Shinmiri and Ceely, and thanks to the chat. And that'll be me as well. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, my friends, best of luck on the path.
Thanks for having us.